night interview, and this is a special interview with Jens Langer. How are you today?
I am perfectly fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. I was talking to this gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and he was telling me about a lot of information that had to do with E. coli and how E. coli can possibly contribute to malodor or bad breath. And he has been looking into this information for a long time, and I just want him to take it away because he has a wealth of knowledge that can inform or a lot of us of what could possibly be the issue of why we might smell. So, Jens, you take it away.
Thank you very much. Let's give a little quick overview. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm not a medical doctor. I have a PhD in computer science, and I worked in this field of the computer science, actually also in sales, computer sales, for a very long time. So yeah, that's about me. I hope the audience doesn't have an issue with my accent. I'm living in the United States already for 20 years, but it was probably too late. So I will probably never ever lose the accent I have. So it's a tough German accent. So sorry for that. So okay, what I would like to talk about today is my personally opinion, what creates this body malodor and bad breath in many cases. So, and that are actually gram-negative bacteria. It doesn't have to be E. coli. It can be other bacteria as well, like Klebsiella. There are some of these bacteria. So, but E. coli, especially E. coli, is a very large group of bacteria.
Well, can you explain to the audience what gram-negative bacteria is?
Oh, yeah, thank you very much. So actually, Gram is a name of a researcher, and he actually found a way to differentiate. There are so-called now we use the terms gram-negative and gram-positive bacteria, and they differentiate in how they are constructed. So, for example, gram-negative bacteria have a much stronger cell wall and things like that. So they probably have a different origin. And so gram-negative, gram-positive is actually, they use colors to stain these bacteria. And gram-negative, so there's a blue stain and a red stain. And gram-positive, I believe, I do not remember right now, but the gram-positive accept the blue stain, and the gram-negative and reddish stain. So that's an easy test to differentiate between both. So many of the pathogenic bacteria, so really bothering us, are gram-negative bacteria. And many of, for example, probiotics are very often gram-positive. So nevertheless, there are some really bad gram-positive bacteria as well, like C. difficile. So that actually can also create a lot of trouble. It's a gram-positive one. But most of the pathogens are actually gram-negative. So thank you for mentioning that. So anyway, that's what I believe. So what I also believe is these bacteria are around for millions of years, and we are just surrounded by them. And normally they are not supposed to make trouble, but so if our body has an issue, for example, with the endocrine system, so all these glands like thyroid gland and the adrenal glands, and also the pituitary gland in the head, for example. So if there's an issue, then it makes it much easier for these bacteria. And we will talk about in detail why that is, why actually these gram-negative bacteria make this trouble if for example, some issues exist with the endocrine system. Okay.
Well, can I ask you, what does the endocrine system do? What is its essential functions?
That's actually a wide variety of functions the endocrine system is doing. So it actually controls the cooperation of cells in our body. So they all talk, and they trigger certain reactions. So from fight and flight reactions. So for example, if we are in danger and we have to run, For example, this, so then adrenaline is pumped into the bloodstream, and we have all the energy we need, and the digestive system is shut down, so we can run, and the focus of the body is totally to the muscles. So, and then there's also the opposite when we sleep at night. So muscles are shut down more or less. We are very relaxed, but the digestion system is working, and digesting food, for example. So, and there are other things as well. So there's a wide variety. So, for example, reproduction purposes and other things. So it's
But it basically focuses on hormones, correct?
Yeah, exactly. That are all the hormones. And it's actually kind of amazing. So if the system is not working really nicely, then there is a bunch of diseases. And in our preparation talk yesterday, I already mentioned that I actually ordered a nice book. It's called the Sieber Collection of Medical Illustrations, Volume 4, Endocrine Systems and Selected Metabolic Diseases. And that's actually from 1957 or so. It's actually pretty aged, but it's a really good book. And Dr. Netter, the medical doctor, he describes very well, together with a team of people, describes very well what can happen if the endocrinal system is not working perfectly fine. So there are a lot of diseases. That's why, I want to finish that here, but that's why it's very important to take care of our endocrinal system, to have, for example, enough iodine in our food. And I personally, I do not like to have iodine, for example, from table salt. So you should actually avoid that. First of all, table salt is like poison. They put actually, it is, because they put, for example, aluminum salts in there to make it crumble, so, and things like that. And that's actually really not healthy. So real sea salt is actually healthy. We need real sea salt. And we also need, for the endocrinal system, we need especially a lot of potassium. Potassium, it's like it's best actually in vegetables. So like all the green leafy vegetables have a lot of potassium. So we should actually have that. So anyway, and for the iodine, I recommend, there are, for example, if you go to a health shop or whatever, or just Whole Foods, for example, they sell actually iodine based on kelp. So like seaweed. So they extracted the iodine from seaweed. So, and currently the recommendation in the United States is like 125 milligram per day. So that's like, it's not a lot. So Japanese people, they eat a lot kelp, for example. They get up to 1,000 or sometimes 3,000 microgram of iodine. So anyway, we should not overdo that, especially not with chemicals, but it is actually good to have enough of that. So okay, let's start. So usually, I also actually checked what happened to many people with the issue, with this body malodor issue. They go to the doctor. The first person of contact would be the primary care physician, family doctor, or whatever. And okay, and then it's up to the family doctor or the primary care physician to, check it out, maybe make some recommendations. And sooner or later, he or she will actually send you off to the next doctor. The first logical choice, dentist, and then maybe also periodontist. So to check out if everything is fine in your mouth. And very often, so there are some issues. It's good to get that fixed. So, but usually, what then happens? Still the same issue. The bad odor is not going away. The next step would be, probably the doctor will recommend go to an ears, nose, and throat doctor. They will check you out, do X-rays, and do a lot of things. Try to, they also do not know what to look for. So they actually also try to do what they can do. And after after a certain time, 3 months, 6 months, maybe longer, you would give up. You would go back to your doctor and say, okay, let me send you to, for example, let's check out your lung. So that would be the next thing. They would do some tests, some additional x-rays, things like that. Everything looks fine. No, it's not. Then very likely it's actually the gastrointestinal tract. So the doctor would send you to a what is it called?
Gastrointestinal.
Yeah, to a gastroenterologist.
Oh yeah, gastroenterologist. I'm sorry.
To get that figured out. So, and they actually have a wide variety of tests what they can do. So, for example, check the stomach, actually swallow some pipe and so, and they can actually take samples from your stomach lining and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's actually an endless story, and then if they can't find anything, they do tests, and everyone did lab tests and, blood samples and whatever, and then you might actually...
I do want to say this, since we're talking about doctors and stuff, I know from my experience, the first person I would go to is a primary care physician, but from my experience with all the doctors I've been to, none of them actually could detect it at all. And from speaking to other people and hearing many other stories, they have the same conclusions. Like most of the doctors think they're crazy, or some of the doctors would recommend seeing a psychologist or a therapist. Do you have a theory on that? I don't think we ever even talked about that before.
It's very simple. I mean, everyone tries to find something, and they do the lab tests, and maybe they find something which is not completely in the range that it should be, and then they try to treat that issue, and then the issue is treated, and the metabolic body malodor or bad breath or whatever is still there. And then you go on to the next. And in most cases, at the very end, your doctor will send you to a psychologist, and they will tell you it's all in your mind.
Right.
That's actually the worst thing, because then it's like you don't know what to do anymore, and your doctor doesn't believe you, and and then issues is if you addressed it to family, they probably also will say, that's in your mind,
Yeah.
That's actually the worst thing, because now you're completely, let's say at school, at university, at work, people complain and make faces, whatever, they actually are unhappy, let's say like that, and then you come home and there's nothing, So that's actually this contradiction. You don't know what to do.
Exactly.
And then you go to your doctor, and the doctor says it's all in your mind. And then it's not in your mind. It's not in your mind. Then you go to a psychologist, and they also have no clue what they are digging for. It's like, what the heck? So, and that's the challenge. Nobody knows what they are looking for. Nobody knows what they are looking for, and that's why they try to find something, and they find things, and that are not the right things. So that's why it's killing everyone, I mean, with this condition, this is actually really nerve-wracking. That's actually, it destroys a person. I mean, there are other reasons, and we will come back to that. But I mean, if you have a challenge like that, that's actually, you can actually fall into a deep depression just right then,
Mm-hmm.
So. And it is really tough. I imagine, many people have a serious issue. How can you continue to study, focus on what you are doing, or work as a researcher, or work with people? How can you do a good job if you have that issue? And then what also, it's very important to mention that this is actually, it's not a steady issue, it's changing. So one day, there might be no body odor, but you believe there is. And
right.
Let me just move a little bit to get out of the sun here.
Mm. So must be really hot.
So yeah, anyway, it's a really challenge. And I mean, this is hard to understand for outsiders, how painful this process is. So that's why it is actually very important to find the real issue. So and real issues can be multiple. So for example, very often it is what I mentioned. Very often these are just bacteria in the small intestine. And I will actually explain why bacteria in the small intestines are a real issue. But also there can be other issues. It can be fungi, like Candida albicans, for example. It can be actually even so. Usually, so in most cases, body malodor is actually not life-threatening.
Right.
But there can be diseases like cancer creating the same really bad body odor. So, and the reason is the digestion process of certain bacteria, as well as fungus, and as well as, for example, cancerous cells, is very similar. So they actually use, for example, fermentation of glucose. And that actually creates smell. It creates substances, and it also not just that it actually creates smelly substances itself. It also actually brings your body in an issue to produce enough other enzymes. So that's why that's a big challenge.
I've heard that diabetes can also give you an odor.
Yes. Very often, I actually had a grandmother, and she also. That's actually it's like, I mean, usually if you have experience with that, this is like the smelly old people odor. I mean, this sweet, so kind of a sweet odor sometimes.
Sweet, sickly odor.
Yeah. So that's a little different. I mean, it also is not nice, but at least it's not a fecal odor,
Right.
So it can be genetic issues. So if you trimethylaminuria, when the FMO3, the flavine-containing monooxygenase enzyme, is actually broken in your body in every cell, then it's an issue. So bacteria, the same bacteria we are talking about, for example, E. coli and so on, and co, are breaking down the choline in the food into trimethylamine, and that's actually a really nasty substance. So it's actually a gas, and it is extremely smelly. And
So you feel like the E. coli can sort of replicate or sort of imitate a TMAU and break down choline and give off the same type of odor?
So first of all, if a person has actually real type 1 TMAU, then the genes are not working, so the enzyme can't be produced. So it's not possible to break down the trimethylamine. So that's a real challenge. But the bacteria are the same. They are breaking down the choline into the trimethylamine. So, and that's actually also happening mostly in the small intestines. So anyway, these bacteria, they are able to simulate TMAU, which is then probably called TMAU2, because tests show clearly there is no genetic damage. And then the question is, why the heck is the body not producing enough of these FMO3 enzyme, right? So, but very often, it is more like because your body is kind of sick with bacteria, and it's not able to produce the enzymes because of that, because it needs to produce other enzymes, for example. Let's go a little deeper into that a little later. So anyway. Also, sometimes there are some, if sometimes people in pretty rare cases, they are, what is it called, divicular or something like that? When you have
diverticulosis, I forgot.
Diverticular. Oh. So when you have, for example, like a blind exit in the esophagus, for example, So the issue is then food gets trapped. It doesn't create pain. It's very rare, by the way. It's not very often, but food gets trapped, and you have additional bacteria there, and so even that actually can create really strange odor. But it's really, really rare. It's not that often. But the majority of people I I would bet on that, is like this bacterial issue in the small intestines.
I do want to ask you this. I never asked you this before. Since I know you talked about E. coli and you say that Candida can possibly make you smell. I also heard of the theory. Some people believe that H. pylori, a common bacteria, could make you smell. Do you feel that there is some truth to that?
Yeah, I mean, so H. pylori is actually especially in the stomach. And creates trouble. And that's my personal experience. I had actually H. pylori, and if you have an issue with the stomach, somehow I don't know what happens. It creates smell temporarily. So that's a very good. This is also a gram-negative bacterium. And what happened to me is then H. pylori is able to create. And also in the in the duodenum, the first part of the small intestine. So yeah, that's what they do. So then the nice thing is it's not the nice part. It's extremely painful. So when you get that, for example, when I got hungry, so then the stomach still releases some stomach acid into the duodenum. And in this moment, when the stomach acid actually hits this ulcer, it's extremely painful. So that's the moment when you are really sure that's cancer. Or if you drink orange juice, for example, it is extremely painful. When the orange juice, it goes through the stomach and hits the walls of the duodenum, extremely painful. The nice thing is, with H. pylori, you can actually take an antibiotics and it's gone. You take it for a couple of days and it's gone. And the gastroenterologist actually told me back then, it's like 25 years ago, he told me, the nice thing is it will never ever return. So you will never get a second so-called ulcer duodeni. Ulcer duodeni is the Latin word for that, and duodenum and ulcer in the duodenum. So you will never get it a second time. You have it one time in your life, and it's good. That's actually really, really nice. Yes.
But what you're saying, what you're suggesting is like most of us, I think this is what you're suggesting. Most of us possibly have E. coli, and no matter how much antibiotics we take, it's not going to just go away, and actually it's going to make it worse.
Right. Yes. That's actually. So, by the way, I would not limit that only to E. coli. As I said, there are other gram-negative bacteria like Klebsiella. They do the same, and they are probably somehow related. They are related to each other, So E. coli is just the interesting thing is, so what people do not know. But if you have sunlight in my face, but anyway.
Yeah, you could change. You could change your position because I know that's going to be annoying.
Yeah, it's actually just right now. The sun is actually at the right spot right now. Outside.
Is there a way to put blinds on or put?
These are the blinds, but they are the blinds have some tiny holes.
Yeah.
So, okay, now it's good. So anyway, these bacteria, they actually do what they do, and that's the issue. In most cases, they do not create pain. They do not create pain, but they have this negative side effect. So let's to make that clear. Let's talk about the digestion tract a little bit. So if you could you please show me picture number 1? Very well. So if you could scroll it a little bit up. Yeah, that's good. So I mean, I have to say, okay. We don't see the lower part, but that's fine.
Let me try to.
That's good. That's okay. So, I mean, normally we also have to mention the part in the head, So because there are these saliva glands, for example, very important. We chew our food, and and there's the tongue, and it's part of the digestion system. So then there's the esophagus. So usually it's fine. It's done stomach. Also, and then there's the duodenum. So we chew our food, and then it's actually mechanically small, So everyone actually would it is actually a good thing to chew as much as possible. And so then actually, because this actually mixes the food with saliva, so all the carbohydrates are already getting broken down in the mouth. So before we swallow it, then in the stomach, we have the stomach acid. It is a very good idea not to eat and drink at the same time, because we would actually dilute the stomach acid. So that means it would be good to drink independent from food, but that's a different matter. So some people are not, they are just got used to that so much that they always drink and eat together. But it would be good. Yeah, I mean, most people do that, you know. So it's like dinner, they have a glass of beer, a glass of water, whatever, and they eat and drink. It would be good to separate that both, you know. Eat.
So what would be the recommended time to, like, let's say you eat something, what would be the recommended time to drink something after? Like, would it be like an hour or 2 hours?
You can drink a little bit, but you should not drink too much, you know. So, and I also recommend not to use carbonated drinks, you know, because this actually, it doesn't make the stomach acid more acidic. It actually reduces the acidity. So I'm just saying, you know, people should be a little careful of that, especially if you have an issue with your digestion system and body odor and so on. That's actually one thing to consider, you know. Eat healthy and do not drink too much, because it's very important, you know. So when you eat food, for example, let's say you eat vegetables, so your stomach is actually like a firewall, because many bacteria will not make it through the stomach, you know, because they will die because of the acidity. So that's why you prevent the bad guys going in. Yeah. So if you drink a lot of water and then eat food, and in case, let's say, the food is actually has, for example, E. coli, then you get it in your system and it will survive the passage through the stomach. I'm just saying, you know, so it doesn't happen all the time, but it could. So it's a good idea to be careful what you do with your stomach. So anyway, then there's the duodenum, and in the duodenum there's one exit from the liver and from the pancreas. So it's combined, you know. So there is like a duct coming from the liver. It combines with a duct coming from the gallbladder, and then there's a duct coming from the pancreas, and they all all come together, and then there's one exit into the duodenum, right? That's the little part directly below the liver in this picture. So, and there, it is actually, for most bacteria, it's nearly impossible to live there, because there's bile from the liver and the gallbladder, and then there is actually the stomach acid, and also the juices from the pancreas. So usually it's like an extremely tough spot for microorganisms. So still, they actually got used to it, and certain E. coli actually are able to withstand that. So then we have the small intestine. So the first part of the small intestine was the duodenum. The second part is actually jejunum. And the last part of the small intestine, so the small intestine is about 20 to 30 feet. So sometimes that's actually interesting. Some people have 30, 32, 35 feet small intestines, others only 20, but all are fine, you know, no functional problems. Yeah?
I got a question from the chat. Harden54 asked you a question. She asked, what does he think about drinking water with fresh squeezed lemon in it? I try to drink an hour after eating and not drinking during the meal.
Yeah, that's good. That's actually what we should do. I mean, I personally, I'm not really good about that. But I drink a lot of green tea and sometimes black tea, sometimes coffee. The best thing would be to drink actually water, and maybe with just a little lemon juice. This would be the most healthy thing to do. Right. So, and interestingly, I mean, lemon juice is an acid, but once when it's through the the stomach and actually gets absorbed into the body, it's actually the opposite. It's not an acid anymore. So that's actually what we need. So that's actually really lemons and limes and all this, they are the best thing we can do for our body. So anyway, they do not reduce the stomach acid. Mm-hmm. That's why it's actually, it doesn't bother, it doesn't interfere with the digestion process. So that's why it is actually really good to have water with a little bit lemon juice in there. It's much better than any other drink. Interestingly, my grandfather, that's like a long time ago, my grandfather died already in 1980 or so, 1981. He always said, he actually was a farm worker, and he said, when you actually, let's say you're working hard and you drink some, they used water with lemon juice, and that actually gives you a kick. It's much better than coffee, believe it or not. When you really work, it's much better than coffee.
Really? So, that's interesting.
Yeah, everyone should try that. So it's actually, there's no caffeine, but it actually gives you energy. It gives you a lot of energy. So that's why it's a very good drink. So anyway, let's come back here. So the small intestine. So the last part of the small intestine is the ileum. And the ileum is actually connected to the large intestines. There is a valve, a sphincter. It's called the ileocecal valve or ileocecal sphincter. Mm-hmm. That's actually a real valve, So what it does, this is a one-way direction, It actually lets go the chyme. So this is actually the slurry when we eat our food and also with drinks and we mix it, it's all mixed, and with stomach acid and so on, it's completely broken down. That is actually called then chyme. And that's going through the small intestine. So when the chyme reaches the end of the small intestine, so there's this valve, and it goes only one direction. And that's actually the idea. It goes only one direction. So, and the basic idea is the small intestine should be sterile. There should be no bacteria there. There should be. So, but then actually is the large intestine. So it's the ascending colon, and there are billions of bacteria, and they have a job to do. So the very first part actually is the cecum with the appendix. And I like to mention that all the time. So the appendix is actually a very important organ, even though some medical doctors seem not to believe that. So what it does, it's like a cradle for bacteria. And if you eat, for example, if you have a certain kind of diet and then change your diet, the kind of bacteria in your colon will change completely. So, for example, if you make an Afghanistan holidays, for 2 weeks, go to Afghanistan, right. They eat meat with meat, and the whatever, when you're done with eating meat, then there's another still meat. The reason is they have it's actually historically they do not have a lot of plants there, so it's not an agricultural country, and they had a lot of animals like sheep and goats and whatever, and then they had to eat meat. So
well, I have two questions from the chat. One of the questions is from Xerxu, and he asks, can intestinal mobility diseases cause odor, and how?
Yes, it can. Can we? Let's talk about it. Let me just write it down. I wanna talk about that a little later, just when I'm done here.
Okay. Do you want me to give you the second question, or do you want to finish?
Yes, give me the second question.
Another question from Rico YouTube asks you, can a lack of vitamin D have an effect on the gut?
Yes. Very simple. Yes, it does. So it's a very, very important. So I mean, it not only on the gut, also the entire system human, depends on vitamin D. So the absorption of calcium and things like that, a lot. Yes, it's very, very important. So my humbled opinion, go to the sun as much as possible. Go into the sun, and I personally, I stopped using sunscreen at all. I don't use it. And also very important, your body actually is the best system to protect yourself from sun. So if you, and that most people do not want to hear that, if you do not have sunglasses, your eyes measure the level of light and UV light and so on. And that's actually via the eye, via the brain, your skin actually produces melatonin, for example, So that means you should go into the sun. You should not actually try to spend 5 hours in the sun because you will burn. But so, I mean, not you, Jermaine. So, but I mean, it depends on the skin type, So anyway, people with darker skin need even more sunlight, because if you don't have enough, there are certain cancers actually created by a lack of vitamin D. So that's why if people with a very dark skin live far north, for example, Canada and farther north, it's not the best idea, because you do not get enough sunlight. People with lighter skin actually need less sunlight because, that's so to create the same amount of vitamin D, right? So anyway, what I'm saying is, go to the sun. You have to know your skin. If you have red hair and a white skin, you probably can only go to the sun for 10 minutes, and then you have to protect yourself with clothes, not with sunscreen. And but you have to do that on a frequent basis, if possible daily. So, and for example, very often, so if you, for example, females actually buy this cream, and there is automatically, in most cases, there are these chemicals in there to protect against sun. So, and that's like they see the sun per day, 5 minutes, by walking from the car to the office. So, right. But the chemicals are actually really bad. The chemicals, I mean, there are, I forgot, there are two major chemicals allowed worldwide in most cases, but they are actually really bad, and they are actually really bad for if you go swimming, for example, for marine life. It's bad for all of these life forms, So why should it be good for us to have that on our skin? Right. I do not get it. So anyway, that's a different matter. My recommendation: go, if you have a chance, go to the sun as often as possible, and just for example, half an hour. So I personally, I know, I tested it out. No sunglasses, and I go running, for example, for 90 minutes, and I will not get a sunburn. So with no t-shirt, for example, where I run, no sunburn, I can actually last 90 minutes. Nothing happens. So but I'm just saying, so everyone has to know how the own skin reacts, and then be careful, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, be careful with that. But you need unprotected light on your skin, and not just the hands and not just the face, but more if possible. So anyway, we talked about what I wanted to say is so the appendix, there is like a cradle for breathing bacteria, and if you eat a lot of meat, for example, and then switch to vegetables, your body, actually your guts will completely substitute the bacteria in the colon, and the cradle for that is the appendix. So it actually keeps like samples of bacteria alive. And once a certain kind of bacteria is needed, it will release it into the colon. And then it takes between 24 and 96 hours. So 1 to 4 days, and it's completely substituted. So it
takes 1 to 4 days for bacteria to change, even if you do a complete different diet. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so this is actually important for your body, because based on what you eat, so there are actually the bacteria. Actually, it's like the body outsources the production of certain vitamins, for example, and there are certain things done there, and it's pretty important to get it done, So that's why. So it's not a good idea if you don't have an appendicitis to remove your appendix. I mean, for example, if you Fireland, also South America, it was like if you want to go there, they told you either you get your appendix removed before you arrive here, or you are not welcome. Because if you have an issue with your appendix and appendicitis, then we don't have a doctor available immediately. You probably will die. So anyway, the point is, it's a very, very important organ. You should not get rid of that. Unfortunately, I lost my appendix 2 years ago.
Well, what happens if you lose your appendix? Because I do know that they do a lot of surgeries, or I've heard that's common, that people like remove their appendix for certain reasons.
Yeah, I mean, I 2 years ago, Christmas, I went to Germany, and I had it's like I had an infection, first nose, and then I actually got a cough, and then it just went through my body. It went through the entire body, and at the very end, I suddenly got pain in my stomach, or around the stomach, and at some point it became really bad. I couldn't, if I just by moving the body around a little bit, I had really horrible pain. And I decided to go to a doctor, and they actually checked me out, so emergency room, like 3 o'clock in the morning, and they checked me out, and they said, looks like your appendix. So we need, and actually the boss there, the boss of this apartment, he was the surgeon himself. He said, actually, so it looks actually really bad. I will actually do surgery immediately. And I actually asked him, what about, can't that be treated, for example, with antibiotics? He said, it can, but in most cases, and actually it comes back like 6 months later. So anyway, the point, I left, but it was actually so horrible. I returned a couple of hours later, and they actually, luckily for me, they actually did the surgery, and he told me actually it was completely, the appendix, when it starts to swell, and then it actually exploded. It already exploded. So wow. I was thinking about flying back, to the United States. But luckily, I didn't do that. I might not have survived that, because then I would probably get whatever,
That's crazy.
So anyway, I didn't. So unfortunately, it's gone. You can live without that. So it's actually it's fine, But it's what I'm saying. It's like you're on high performance. You normally do not want to cause someone's thought about that. Why? So anyway, so that's what I'm saying, So the bacteria actually are changing depending on your diet, on your regular diet, and if you change, so you might have a little issue if you change your diet completely, so abruptly, so a little bit to adapt for your body, and the microbiome actually fine. So anyway, in the large intestine, there is E. coli. We all have E. coli in the large intestines. So it's in the category, we call that commensal E. coli. Commensal means they don't do harm to us, but they have an advantage to live with us, because we are feeding them. So that's fine. We all have that. And by the way, they also produce vitamin K2 for us. So vitamin K2 is actually good. For example, if you have enough vitamin K2, then you don't get wrinkles. That's why, for example, Japanese females have this nice skin, so they get actually enough vitamin K2 from fermented soy beans, so called natto. So anyway, that's actually, so vitamin K2 is actually not a bad thing.
I have a question. I know you said when we spoke some time ago, you said the average person has at least 5 different strands of E. coli inside their system.
In the large intestine.
In the large intestine.
Yes.
And is Is it actually impossible to get rid of E. coli completely from our system?
I would not, because they actually got a part of the system. They are a part of your microbiome. The issue, I mean, not an issue. So they actually, what they do is they digest, for example, also there in the large intestine, they digest, metabolize, means digest, tryptophan. That creates this fecal smell of the fecal matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So nevertheless, it's well encapsulated. It's fine. What you can do is you have to have enough fiber, because what happens is the fiber there. I mean, microorganisms are eating this fiber. So you do a lot of things for good bacteria in your guts, because they eat it. But it also, I read recently an article, it actually creates like an coating on your large intestine from the inside. So bad bacteria have an issue, they are sliding off, So that's good for, so that's why you should have enough fiber. So either if you get enough fiber from the food, it's fine. But it's not a bad idea to add some fiber, via powders and things like that. That's actually a good thing. So usually if you have SIBO, so a small bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth is this way, then doctors usually recommend not to have too much prebiotics. So that's actually like fiber. Mm-hmm. Because there's actually, it increases the amount of bacteria there. So, but usually that's not the issue. That's not the issue. And if your system is working fine, it's actually good to have enough fiber, because, so here's one very important aspect. If the transit time through your guts is actually rather short, so through the small intestine and the large intestine, if it's rather short, bad bacteria, they like to ferment glucose, and that's a fermentation process. When the transit time is short, there's not enough time for this fermentation process, and this reduces body odor. So we will talk about how these bacteria live and what they do and what they like. So let's talk about that.
Okay.
So anyway, that's actually, so last thing, if there are some diseases when actually this commensal E. coli actually get rogue and are able to make it through the ileocecal valve into the small intestine. Normally, that's why the valve is there, to prevent bacteria going up. So, but if for whatever reason they are able to make it through, and so normally it's a tough environment, because, as I said, so especially close to duodenum, it's a lot of stomach acid and bile and things like that. So, but if they actually make it up, and you actually reduce your stomach acid by proton pump inhibitors, PPI or whatever it's called, and things like that, and you reduce your stomach acid because you have GERD and acid reflux. So then these bacteria are able to make it up, and if they are able to make it into the pancreas, for example, they can actually create serious trouble there. I don't want to say they actually can create cancer, but real bad damage in the pancreas. So I'm just saying this is a specific disease, and there's a specific strain of commensal E. coli. I forgot what it is, what the name is, like M1655 or something like that. So, but it doesn't matter. So let's talk about the small intestines, bacteria in the small intestine.
Let me read this comment that just came from the chat.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
One from Caramel Gazelle just asks, are we missing an enzyme? And that is possibly the reason why we smell?
No, FMO3 is an enzyme, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a genetic defect and this enzyme is missing, then yes, but normally not. No, we will talk about why we have an issue. with not producing enough enzymes. Reasons for that, we will talk about that. So normally, most people do not have a deficiency in enzymes. Okay. So anyway, let's talk about. So as I said, gram-negative bacteria. A specific case is E. coli. And normally you read E. coli and you think this is one bacterium, but the truth is these are probably millions of different strains of bacteria. So and E. coli is one of the most researched organisms on this planet. So many researchers. I'm not kidding. So many researchers worked on that and tried to find new things and whatever. So E. coli is used. So by the way, in our case, so let's talk. So for example, the chemical industry is using E. coli to produce on an industrial style, and they produce, for example, acetaldehyde. It's a different matter why they need it, but they produce acetaldehyde with that. If the bacteria in your gut produce acetaldehyde, it's a really bad thing because it's really toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And also the pharmaceutical industry, they use E. coli for many purposes. For example, to produce artificial vitamins. For example, artificial. For example, I told you, for example, they produce vitamin K2, but they can be actually reprogrammed to produce other vitamins as well. And
interesting.
Yeah, they also so this is actually used for a long time already. So, for example, they also can produce human growth hormones. So if children actually stay really small, there's a certain disease. So you can actually give this artificially means the E. coli created it. You can actually give them this human growth hormones, and they will actually grow bigger, taller, right? So what I'm saying is it's used for our purpose, these bacteria. So that's actually a good thing. So nevertheless, let's talk about them. So let me give you an example. There's one lab in Europe, in Belgium. They offer, for research purposes, they offer 64,000 different strains of E. coli. So that's actually, it's a small fraction of the real amount of E. coli. I'm just saying, if you read in the newspaper or you hear on television or so, if someone talks about E. coli, there is no one E. coli, it's so many different E. colis.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, when you look into, if you just do a simple Google search on E. coli, most of the times they talk about the E. coli that makes you have severe diarrhea with blood in it. I never heard about the different billions of strands of E. coli until I had a conversation with you. And I do want to actually read something from the chat here from Look at Me Now. He asks, what does he think the next 5 years entails with the research in terms of E. coli? I guess E. coli when he says research.
So first of all, we are used to live with this E. coli for a very long time. For millions of years, and we will talk about that later. So there are some bad E. coli, and what I wish, my personal opinion, the point is, we will talk about that a little bit in more detail, how they do that, but they actually are able to generate brand new enzymes. The E. coli is able to create new enzymes to break down even the most modern antibiotics. So if you take these extended spectrum beta-lactam antibiotics, they are able to break it down. They are able, some of them will die, others will break it down. So that's why, especially E. coli is, and many of these strains are multi-resistant. There is no antibacterium available on this planet anymore. You can't do anything. If they want to kill you, they will kill you. So that's why antibiotics in feeding animals literally with antibiotics is the most stupid idea, because if we make these bacteria mad, they can kill us. Luckily, they don't. Usually they don't. In most cases they don't. Okay.
I do want to say this too. From Look at Me Now, he was actually asking about like malodor research.
Yeah, I got it. So yes, what I want to talk what we can do about that. The issue is, I mean, usually I'm included here. It's like you want to kill it, and then so it's like give me a pill, killing it, and then I want to go on with my life. So unfortunately, it's not like that. I will talk about, one of the most promising approaches to that is actually our bacteriophages. And I want to talk about that, So bacteriophages are actually, that's amazing what they can do. Unfortunately, in the Western world, especially in the United States, research on bacteriophages got neglected for the last 50 years. And it's really bad. So why I'm saying that is bacteriophages have the opportunities. It's like, you have to imagine it's like small, like a virus. It's not, from our point of view, it's not really an organism. It's not really life, whatever it is, But they are able to kill a very specific strain of E. coli, for example, or another bacterium. So unfortunately, we are even surrounded by bacteriophages, but unfortunately, in most cases, not the right bacteriophages. Especially if you, anyway, we will talk about that later. Let me just, I will actually explain what we can do about E. coli, about body malodor. But let's just talk about this bacteria. So, did you have a picture? No, let me. So, we use them as humans. So if let's go to E. coli specifically. But what I'm saying also appears to other gram-negative bacteria. So, for example, in E. coli, E. coli means Escherichia coli. That's the name of a child doctor from Germany from 1870. So his name was Escherich, and he actually found the reason of child diarrhea is an bacterium. So that's why they named it like after him, So that's why since that time it's Escherichia coli. And then to make it a little easier, even I have an issue with this German name.
Right.
So that's why we call it E. coli. So anyway, there are typical and atypical. That means typical is if a bacterium only actually attacks one species. So there are typical E. coli only attacking humans, and then there are atypical. They don't care if it's cow, sheep, goat, human, monkey, horse, whatever, even insects like moth. So that's actually very important. Even reptiles can have that, So anyway, then the next thing is they can become as asymptomatic. Asymptomatic means normally if we talk E. coli, the first what every doctor would actually immediately think is actually diarrhea. So interestingly, in most cases, these little children, babies, they are very susceptible to E. coli, and they actually get it. And then they have, for example, bloody or just some, in a better case, only just watery diarrhea. And with a little luck, after 14 days, it goes away. And then everyone is happy. So medical doctors actually, they figured out, antibiotics only if it looks like the person or the baby will die, then they would try antibiotics, but otherwise they know it doesn't help too much. So the only thing what you can do is actually have enough water. So have enough liquid, because by the diarrhea you lose so much liquid, and you have to have electrolytes. Also by diarrhea you lose all the electrolytes. So, and that could for example, your heart would stop working if you don't have any electrolytes left. So what they do is actually give babies and sick patients with an E. coli infection, they just give them enough water and with electrolytes, and then hope it will go away. And then, let's say after 14 days, it's gone. So, and everyone say, okay, now he's healthy again. The issue is, That's actually the time frame when our immune system is attacking E. coli. And there are some, some really bad E. coli types. Let me just mention some. So adherent invasive E. coli or enteroaggregative E. coli. There's one, the bloody one, is enterohemorrhagic E. coli. This actually creates a bloody diarrhea. Then enteropathogenic E. coli creates a watery diarrhea. Enterotoxigenic, it's also just a regular diarrhea. Diffusely adherent E. coli, and so on. So these are just E. coli's actually like to live in our guts. They are also in the urinary tract. So the UPAC, so urinary, what's it called? Uropathogenic E. coli lives in the bladder and the kidneys and so on. And then even for babies, during birth, they can actually, E. coli actually can enter their system and go into the brain. Then you get the neonatal meningitis. So there are a lot of these bad. So it's not just what I just mentioned about 10 also. These are not just 10 strains. So each of them has multiple different strains. You can actually have 10 different enteropathogenic E. coli or even more, though they are actually different. So anyway, the issue is, and that's actually very, very seriously, you had as a baby, you had, for example, this diarrhea, or you can actually get a traveler's disease. You go to Latin America or to India and get diarrhea. So you got, for example, an E. coli. After a while, the diarrhea goes away, but this bacterium is still there. So, and now the trouble starts. The trouble with bad malodor, because what they do. So let's talk about how they eat, what they do. First of all, could you let me I would like to see a picture right now, another picture.
Okay. The second one?
Yeah, I skipped, by the way, let's just for a second, because I wanted to show that. So this actually explains how that works with TMAU to a TMAU. So it's like, so you eat choline, and in the small intestine, it gets actually broken down into trimethylamine. And then usually if you have enough FMO3, the flavine-containing monooxygenase gene, and enzyme, then it's not a big deal. It would get broken down. But if not, so if it gets broken down into 3-methylamine N-oxide, it's odorless, colorless, resolves in water, and can be flushed out of your system. If you have that in large quantities, it will actually damage your kidneys before it leaves. So this is negative side effect. So anyway, if you have an issue to produce enough of these, as I said, there's a gene, and to produce the enzyme, the gene is the blueprint, in our genetic material. So, and then there's an enzyme produced, and that actually will break this TMA down. So in less smelly substances. So trimethylamine is actually used by deep sea creatures. So if, for example, I'm talking about 5,000, maybe 8,000 feet deep in the ocean, it helps them to withstand high water pressures, extremely high water pressures, right? But if you catch a fish from there, so fishermen also, they will actually throw it back immediately because they smell so badly.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually, in my life, I met 2 persons where I immediately could say that's actually trimethylamine. So, for example, one was a taxi driver in Orlando. It's like I entered his taxi cab. And, I smelled that, and I immediately got stomach pain just by, that's a very pungent, really aggressive, bad smelling gas,
Wow.
So
stomach pain.
Yeah, that's actually, I immediately got pain from that, it's so bad. So I'm just saying, and most people actually smell like fecal matter somehow, if they have that issue. So this trimethylamine is obviously not the major issue of most people, because even if they have a primary TMAU proven in the lab, you know, so with genetic tests, so in the most cases they smell like fecal matter or whatever, you know, but not like this trimethylamine. That's actually, as I said, you know, fishermen would, if they catch a fish or an creature from deep sea, they will throw it back immediately into the water, you know, because it smells so bad. It's like you are getting tears in your eyes, you know. So
Okay.
anyway, I just wanted to, but let's go to I wanted to have this E. coli picture number 3. Yeah, that's how E. coli, for example, can look like. So I hope everyone can see that. So you have this rod-shaped body. Then at the end, in most cases, at a pole of this rod-shaped individual, you have so-called flagella. Flagella. And so around the rod-shaped body is this capsule. There are pili. So these pili are little tiny fine hair, and they can use these sometimes. You know, for example, they can actually reproduce sexually and asexually. So sometimes they use the pili, these little tiny things, to pull another bacterium close to them. You know, to have an sexual reproduction. But the flagella, show this picture. The flagella actually are used to move. They have, believe it or not, they have a little like an biological motor. They can actually move them clockwise as well as counterclockwise, and they use it like a propeller. So they can actually actively move to different locations where they actually want to go. So what you can see here is actually, so there's a cell wall, and there's a membrane, and there's a capsule. So, and inside there's actually cytoplasm. So, and the DNA is directly swimming in there, right? And then there are so-called ribosomes and whatever necessary there. So, but the important thing is, that's actually bacteria or so-called prokaryotic cells, organisms, but the DNA is directly in the cell. So there's no other substructure there. So directly the DNA, there's the black line in there, right? So in difference to our cells, like humans and animals and plants and insects and reptiles and whatever, you know, so what's actually moving on this planet, we have prokaryotic cells, and the prokaryotic cell has actually membrane encapsulated organelles. So like the nucleus, for example, you know, there's a membrane around that, and our DNA is in the nucleus, right? And then there's, for example, the power station of the cell, like mitochondria, also has a membrane. So our cells also have a liquid in there, but all these organelles actually are floating in that. So that's a major difference. So anyway, I wanted to mention that. What I want to mention here, if our immune system attacks, for example, this E. coli cell, and it dies and it breaks open, this cytoplasm is actually toxic to us. So it depends on the bacterium. So it is obviously in most cases toxic enough to create diarrhea. In some cases, it's so toxic it actually will destroy our gut lining, and then it starts bleeding. That's really, really, really tough. So that's why if a baby, for example, has this enterohomerogen, you kind of have an issue with this word. So let's call it EHEC. If it has that, it gets bloody diarrhea in the first 14 days. The reason is this bacterium gets attacked by the immune system, and after about 10 to 14 days, actually, the bacterium is able to negotiate with the immune system and say, "Hey, we are the good guys." And the immune system actually, so they are able to hide, and the immune system is not attacking anymore. and that's why suddenly, without the immune system reaction and all this, very important to mention, we have actually 10 major nerves in our body, and one is the vagus nerve. It going down our neck, outside the spinal cord, is going down our neck into the body, and there it is connected to all organs, like heart, and also the small intestine, large intestine, kidneys, whatever, you know. So, and if there's a major trouble, like an infection, then the vagus nerve sends this information back, and the brain actually then triggers diarrhea. So let me give you an example for that. My mother actually had a small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and she had this horrible permanent diarrhea. So, and it was not clear to me, you know, when she actually ate something, like 10 minutes later, she needed to go to the bathroom. Remember, I said we have about 20 to 30 feet of small intestine. It will take a long time. It will take a couple of hours for food to go through. So how is it possible that someone gets a diarrhea 10 minutes after eating something? You know, it should take 12 hours. You might get diarrhea, but it should take 12 hours. But what happens is, if the nervous system recognizes something bad going on, like the immune system is fighting, then the vagus nerve will actually trigger a diarrhea in the large intestines, with hoping that the chyme in the small intestine will move faster and will take actually the pathogens along. That's the idea behind it, right? So the advantage is it's actually really bad if you have diarrhea on a daily basis. So there are, I don't know if the numbers are right, but somewhere I read like 10% of the American population has an issue. So imagine you get diarrhea, whatever you do, you have an issue to go to work because you don't want to soil your pants in the office. You know,
right.
You can do that one time. You can do that not every day. You know, so that's actually really bad. So anyway, that's actually caused by bacteria, and they actually trigger that. So in case of bad body malodor, so it's actually the body arranged with the bacterium, and they live there, but they actually their metabolites are actually creating the trouble. So let me just for a second talk about first of all, they love to ferment glucose, but also it depends on the bacterium. All of them like glucose. Some of them like, for example, to ferment lactose, so from milk, and other sugars, and even sugar alcohols. So if you believe your issue is going away, if you use artificial sweeteners, you're wrong. You might be wrong, because your bacterium might actually also be able to digest that and do the same crap with that. So,
and I do want to ask you this: since we're talking about glucose, or some of the bacteria love glucose. So glucose is mostly found in carbohydrates, or it could be found in any sugar, like a complex sugar, like fruit, like an apple or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, what happens is, if you can eat, so if you eat starch, for example, or whatever, you know, it could be normal, regular sugar in your Coke. It can be fruit sugar, you know, it can be a lot of things. So if you eat it, you know, your saliva glands this juice from there, you know, also starts to break down more complex sugar into glucose, and then the pancreas is responsible to break it down completely in the duodenum and the following parts, jejunum and duodenum, ileum. So anyway, the point is, every starch, you know, so if you eat a lot of fruit, it can be grapes, you know, it can be whatever, you know, it actually it's changed into actually glucose in your body.
And the E. coli breaks it down, and when it breaks it down and ferments it, that gives you this malodor.
Exactly. So if you, for example, eat potatoes, they are able to produce hydrogen sulfide, hydrogen sulfide, so H2S, which is really smelly. The bad thing is, if you would have that in the large intestine, it's well encapsulated there, but in the small intestine, it's going to the bloodstream, and then it comes out of your lung, it comes out of your mouth. You breathe it out, it comes out of the skin, everywhere. So that's actually one thing. But E. coli and Klebsiella and the like, same thing. They also break down tryptophan. They also break down choline. They also break down tryptophan, and they change tryptophan into indole, which is actually fecal smelling. That's our fecal material.
And tryptophan is an amino acid that's found in many proteins, right?
Yes. So that's actually essential for us. So this tryptophan is essential. So because we build for example, serotonin. So if we do not have enough serotonin, we will feel depressed, right? That's actually one reason why a lot of people with that issue feel depressed. They just do not get enough serotonin because the bacteria are using the tryptophan, and and they don't let enough for us. So anyway, and then the another thing. What was that? And another issue is that they also can actually consume the so-called glutamine, and glutamine is like available in the bloodstream in abundance. And so we can't starve these bacteria, because if there's no glucose and nothing else available, they can actually suck it out of the cells or guts, so from the blood.
So okay, well, I want to just ask this. So you feel that glucose, or the E. coli feeds on the glucose,
yeah,
and once it ferments, the E. coli ferments the glucose, we give off this odor. So
yeah, one metabolite, one very important metabolite is, let me just interrupt for a second. One very important metabolite is acetaldehyde. So that's the same thing. But if you drink alcohol, then it's broken down into acetaldehyde, and that actually is very toxic, and our body has to react immediately. So as a result, it will actually create in large quantities the enzyme to break down acetaldehyde into acetate, and that's actually not toxic anymore. So the issue with that is then our body has to focus, and it prioritizes on the acetaldehyde and does not produce enough other enzymes like the FMO3. So if you drink a lot of alcohol, you might actually, the next day, you might actually smell really badly like fecal matter, because then, or also like trimethylamine, because these enzymes are not produced anymore, because the body actually tries to keep you alive by breaking down the acetaldehyde.
You also told me that in drinking like industrial orange juice has acetaldehyde too. So if you drink that, you can also give off an odor as well.
Yeah, that's the same issue. Our body has to focus then on the acetaldehyde, and it also, that's why certain things make it worse. So, and by the way, orange juice also very often, I don't know if this is actually related to H. pylori. So in many people, it is the orange juice immediately gets fermented. And I had cases like that, when people, after just a glass of orange juice, really smelled badly. It's not the same with an orange. If you eat an orange, different matter. But if you have this orange juice, industrial produced orange juice, it can create really bad fecal matter. So matter smell.
But since you were saying like sugars that you can find just like I don't know, like in breads or in fruit or even the starches, is going to contribute to this fecal odor. But even if you remove all this stuff from your diet, the E. coli is still going to get glucose from your body. So you're still going to smell either way, even if you like deplete or remove these types of things.
No. So point is, if you actually if you try to reduce the glucose bacteria can get, then actually that's actually their most important food.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, the body odor goes down. You know, I mean, there are multiple. That's actually not that easy to understand. You know, you eat one day something, it actually creates obviously really bad body odor. Next day, not so much. So there are hormonal influences. You know, for example, the E. coli does not always metabolize the same amount of tryptophan. So it depends on the surroundings, whatever hormonal levels. And so, for example, these endocrine hormones here, like adrenaline and noradrenaline, or in American it's actually epinephrine and norepinephrine. So you know, so if you are stressed, you smell more. So
Right.
So you had the same food, but suddenly, you know, the bacteria, the microbiome in your small intestine reacts differently. So I'm just saying, you know, so that's actually, it's tough to understand what's going on. I'm just telling you, you know, so
Right.
it's stress. Yeah. So
Another thing, I'm sorry. Another thing you told me that was very fascinating yesterday was you told me that since you were just talking about like hormones could constantly could affect your body odor, you were also telling me that masturbation could possibly
yes.
worsen your odor as well.
Yes. So what happens is these bacteria developed actually receptors for so all mammals use certain very similar hormones, you know. So like it doesn't really matter if it's a cow or whatever. So and they developed receptors for that. So they are able to understand, you know, if there's a high level of certain of these hormones, they actually are able to read that, and they can actually use this information against you. So, for example, some of these sex steroid hormones, for example, testosterone actually brings the immune system down. So certain animals, you know, fighting deer, for example, you know, the male deers fighting, they are very I mean, they have an extremely high level of testosterone when they're fighting for the females. So, but at the same time, they get infections and worms and whatever, you know, a little time in the year when they actually are not fighting for the females and the testosterone level is low, then they start to heal. So that's actually the same with humans. So that's why, believe it or not, you know, just watching porn is enough. Your body will release enough testosterone, for example. The same in case of females, you know, progesterone, that's the pregnancy hormone. So normally if a female would actually get pregnant, but the female body would reject it immediately as an intruder. So, and therefore, there's the progesterone. It will actually reduce the immune system reaction. So it enables, in the first place, without that hormone, and pregnancy would not be possible. So the sperm can actually find the egg, and all this process, the fertilized egg will actually enter into the wall of the uterus and things like that. So, but the hormone is necessary to do that. Otherwise, there's no pregnancy. So, there are, for example, estrogen is the same. No, not estrogen. I wanted to say cortisol. So produced by the adrenal glands. So if you have a very high cortisol level, or if you take medication, you might not immediately experience bad body odor, but if you have the right food, you will actually start smelling. You know, if you take high levels of antihistamine and cortisol and things like that. So they know it. These bacteria, they are reading that. They have the receptors, you know, and they know it's a good time for them. They actually, what will happen is they will actually take more space in the guts. They will expand, right? And suddenly, you know, if you have, let's say you have only a handful of these bacteria and they ferment food, nobody will notice, you know. So, but if they suddenly are able to get access to the majority of your small intestine, and suddenly there are billions of these bacteria in fermenting food, then suddenly you are start to smell badly. So that's actually an issue, right? That's why these hormones are very, very important. So that's why so believe it or not, I read something. So for example, like middle-aged men actually are going to prostitutes and try to avoid protection because they recognized if they actually use protection, they will smell badly after that. But if they don't, so it's not completely clear. I was actually trying to research that if there is so. But what I believe is, so in regular intercourse with the opposite sex, you get the opposite hormones, and so then you don't have an extreme spike of in the days after, so 1, 2, 3, 4 days after, and spike of or a low of testosterone and estrogen. You also have, as a male, you also have estrogen, right? So that actually will actually flatten out the level of certain hormones. So if this is protected intercourse, this actually these hormones will spike much higher. And the bacteria will take care of that. I mean, they misuse that. So I do not recommend, by the way, I do not recommend to have unprotected intercourse with someone you don't know, because then you get other bacteria and other diseases.
Right. So
that's a really bad idea. So the conclusion is, in this case, it would be good to have a permanent partner, sexual partner, and stick to your spouse. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I did want to say this. I know you said we wanted to break it up in parts because you feel like, we can talk for hours about this. Right now, it's like an hour 26. Do you want to finish?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's just say some interesting things about this bacterium, and then let's have another talk, and we will talk about what we can do, right? What we can do to reduce the odor. So I just wanted to say so it sounds, so they can actually produce enzymes to break down any antibiotics. So if you try to kill them with antibiotics, this might actually backfire. So they're diffusely adherent E. coli, for example, they run, so if you apply an antibiotics, they dive into the tissue and stay there. They can actually use glutamine as food source, so they don't have to have glucose, So glutamine is fine as well. So, and then what they create diseases like Crohn's disease, right? So you get diarrhea and cramps, and this actually will stay till the end of your life. Currently, there's no medication to heal that. So this is actually a follow-up disease of antibiotics, So because the bacterium is going into deeper levels of the tissue. So, and also I read an article so for example, E. coli and cholera are related. They split off. The last joint ancestor was about 103 million years ago. So there are time markers, you can actually roughly estimate when some certain events took place. So E. coli and cholera split off. And the same thing with, for example, chlamydia. And they actually split off 3.2 billion years ago. Amazingly, when that happened, there were no multicellular organisms based on eukaryotic cells available. So the bacteria were already there, but they need to live. They need actually these multicellular organisms. So my conclusion is they developed with multicellular organisms, but multicellular organisms on Earth started to exist about 1.85 million years ago. So there is some difference of between 1.85 billion years and 3.2 billion years, for example. So what did they do? You know, they didn't change that much in the time. You know, still the same rod-shaped bacteria. So my conclusion is they came from somewhere else. You know, so they developed somewhere else, not on Earth. It doesn't really matter. They integrated completely in the ecosystem, and they actually now play an important role. And I want to mention that's actually, it's a little odd, but if a person dies, you know, then these bacteria actually break down the body from the inside out. So, and you don't need a bacteria from the outside to do that. It will actually happen from the inside. So they play a very important role in the ecosystem, right? So you should not, yeah. So, and what else? Classification. So one method of classification is by antigens. They have an O antigen, and they have a K antigen and an H antigen. There's a picture. Maybe let me just. Do you see somewhere a picture with these antigens?
Let me check.
This is actually 14. So oh, there's so much. Yeah, let me just finish that, and we should continue another day if that's possible.
Okay.
So there are antigens, and for example, this hemorrhagic E. coli, so this bloody one, actually has, for example, the O antigen 157 and the H antigen H7. So the O is actually stands for, it's the cytoplasm inside the cell, and the H is actually the flagellum. So this little propeller, you know, so our body can react to that, and then you get diarrhea. So you don't have to have antigens for all of that, you know, so sometimes you don't need a K, so your body will react anyway. So, and what you see is, so this is actually one of the most, this bacterium here, 157H7, is one of the worst, you know, creating a lot of diseases. So I would like to wrap it up for today. I'm sorry I didn't make it as far as I wanted to.
Yeah.
So we should actually pick it up the next time, and then let's talk about what we can do to get rid of the odor.
Yeah, yes, definitely. Will you be available next week, Friday?
Yes. Yes.
All right, yeah. So we'll pick it up next week, Friday, and we'll continue off from what we can do to reduce it, to get doctors to recognize if we do have E. coli, so on and so forth.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jermaine.
All right. So yeah, we're wrapping this up. I appreciate all the people who tuned in to see it. This is a special interview with Jens Langer, and we're out of here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.